What happens when humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our weapons, or our numbers, but something written in our very DNA? Dr. Sarah Chen thought she was just another graduate student until a routine genetic analysis revealed she possessed predatory capabilities that defied every known law of evolution. Now, as alien civilizations across the galaxy quietly reclassify humans from harmless primitives to apex threat, Sarah must discover what makes her species so terrifying to creatures who have ruled the stars for millennia. The answer lies not in what humans can do, but in what they're willing to become. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stepped into the cool air of the Galactic University's Advanced Biology Wing. The sprawling complex on Kepler Station housed students from 47 different species, making it the most diverse educational facility in known space. To Sarah, it still felt like a dream. 3 years ago, she had been studying marine biology at UC San Diego. Now, she was pursuing her doctorate in xenobiology alongside beings whose very existence challenged everything humans thought they knew about life. The hallway buzzed with activity. A group of crystalline Zeltari floated past, their bodies chiming softly as they communicated through harmonic frequencies. Near the main laboratory entrance, several furry Mokrani clustered around a holographic display, their 6 arms gesturing excitedly as they debated something in their rapid, chittering language. Sarah smiled and nodded to them as she passed, though she doubted they noticed her among the constant flow of students. That was one thing about being human in this place, you tended to blend into the background. Humans were still considered relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 15 years earlier. Most species viewed them as enthusiastic but unremarkable newcomers, useful mainly for their adaptability and willingness to take on tedious research tasks that other species found beneath them. Sarah didn't mind. She had always been more comfortable observing than being the center of attention. Her research focused on evolutionary adaptation patterns across different gravity wells, a subject that most of her classmates found incredibly boring. Perfect for someone who preferred to work quietly without drawing too much notice. She made her way to Laboratory 7, where Dr. Kestar, her Villani advisor, was waiting. The tall, insectoid professor stood nearly 8 feet high, her forearms methodically arranging equipment on the pristine metal workbenches. Her compound eyes tracked Sarah's approach with that unnerving precision that still made humans uncomfortable, even after years of contact. Punctual as always, Miss Chen, Dr. Kestar clicked in accented Standard Galactic. Her translator rendered the sounds into crisp, slightly mechanical English. Today we will be conducting the final genetic mapping for your comparative evolution project. Sarah nodded, setting down her datapad and slipping into a lab coat. I've prepared the samples from all 12 species as requested. The comparative sequences should give us a good baseline for analyzing adaptive mutations in low-gravity environments. Excellent. Dr. Kestar's mandibles clicked approvingly. And, you have included your own genetic material as the human baseline? Yes, though I'm not sure how useful it will be. Humans haven't had much time to adapt to space environments compared to species that have been living on low-gravity worlds for thousands of years. Perhaps, Dr. Kestar replied, though something in her tone suggested she found the topic more interesting than she let on. Nevertheless, complete datasets require all available samples. Please proceed with the initial sequencing while I calibrate the quantum genetic analyzer. Sarah moved to her workstation, a complex array of instruments that could map genetic sequences down to the quantum level. The technology still amazed her. On Earth, genetic sequencing had been limited to identifying basic DNA patterns. Here, they could analyze the probability waves of genetic expression, predict evolutionary potentials, and even identify dormant genetic switches that might activate under specific environmental pressures. She began with the control samples, starting with the Villani sequences that Dr. Kestar had provided. The insectoid species had evolved on a world with gravity roughly 60% of Earth's, developing elongated limbs and enhanced reflexes to navigate their low-gravity environment. Their genetic code showed clear markers for calcium regulation, muscle fiber density adjustments, and enhanced inner ear development. The Mokrani samples came next, showing similar adaptations but with additional markers for their unique 6-limb configuration. Each species displayed fascinating evolutionary responses to their environments, patterns that Sarah was mapping into her theoretical framework for predicting genetic adaptation. Finally, she prepared her own sample, a simple cheek swab that the analyzer would process along with the others. She expected to see the typical human genetic pattern, adaptable but unremarkable, showing the mixed heritage of a species that had evolved in Earth's standard gravity but possessed enough genetic diversity to potentially adapt to new environments over time. The analyzer hummed to life, processing each sample through its quantum genetic matrix. Sarah watched the data streams flowing across her monitor, genetic sequences unfolding in complex three-dimensional patterns that mapped not just current genetic expression but potential evolutionary pathways. The alien samples processed quickly, their results matching her expectations. Straightforward genetic adaptations, clearly evolved responses to environmental pressures, neat evolutionary patterns that fit comfortably within established xenobiological theory. Then, her own sample entered the analyzer. The first anomaly appeared within seconds. Sarah frowned at her monitor, wondering if there had been some contamination. The genetic pattern that emerged bore little resemblance to the baseline human genome she had expected to see. Instead, the analyzer displayed a complex web of genetic sequences that seemed to twist and shift as she watched, defying the neat categorization that had characterized the alien samples. "Dr. Kestar?" Sarah called, her voice uncertain. "I think there might be an error in the analyzer. My human sample is showing some very strange readings." The Bellani professor approached, her compound eyes focusing on Sarah's monitor. For a long moment, she stood absolutely still, her mandibles frozen mid-click. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a tension that Sarah had never heard before. "Run the analysis again. Use a fresh sample." Sarah complied, taking another cheek swab and feeding it into the analyzer. The results were identical, a genetic pattern so complex and layered that it seemed to pulse with potential energy. Embedded within the familiar human genetic framework were sequences that the analyzer couldn't categorize, patterns that seemed to exist in quantum superposition until observed directly. "I don't understand," Sarah said, staring at the impossible results. "These readings suggest genetic complexity far beyond what should be possible for a single species. It's almost like there are multiple evolutionary pathways active simultaneously." Dr. Kestar's forearms moved rapidly across her own control panel, calling up comparison databases that contain genetic information from thousands of species across known space. Sarah watched as her genetic pattern was compared against everything from simple bacterial life to the most complex sentient species in the galaxy. The results were unlike anything in the database. "Miss Chen," Dr. Kestar said carefully, "I need you to understand that what we are seeing here is highly unusual. Your genetic pattern displays markers that we have theoretical knowledge of but have never observed in practice." "What kind of markers?" "Predatory adaptation sequences. Genetic switches that activate under stress conditions. Environmental response patterns that suggest your species has evolved not just to adapt to new conditions, but to dominate them." Dr. Kestar paused, her mandibles clicking nervously. "These are genetic markers we associate with apex predator species." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "But humans aren't apex predators in space. We're barely spacefaring. We've been part of the galactic community for less than 2 decades. According to these readings, that may be irrelevant. Your genetic pattern suggests evolutionary potential far beyond what your species has yet demonstrated. The analyzer is detecting dormant sequences that could activate under the right conditions, sequences that would allow for rapid adaptation, enhanced problem solving, increased aggression when threatened, and, most concerning, an apparent genetic drive for expansion and territorial acquisition." Sarah stared at her monitor in shock. The genetic pattern seemed to rife with hidden potential, switches and sequences that suggested her species carried within them capabilities that had never been tested. "Are you saying humans are potentially dangerous?" "I am saying," Dr. Kestar replied slowly, "that according to this analysis, humans may be among the most genetically advanced predatory species ever encountered. Your genetic code suggests you are evolutionarily designed not just to survive in new environments, but to conquer them." The laboratory fell silent except for the gentle hum of equipment. Sarah found herself looking at her own hands as if seeing them for the first time, wondering what hidden potential lay dormant in her cells. Around them, the analyzer continued processing, mapping genetic pathways that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of human potential. "What do we do with this information?" Sarah asked finally. Dr. Kestar was already moving toward the communication console. "First, we verify these results with independent analysis. Then, if confirmed, this data must be reported to the Galactic Biological Assessment Council immediately. Genetic patterns of this type are classified under the Predatory Species Monitoring Protocol." "What does that mean?" "It means, Ms. Chen, that humanity may need to be reclassified from developing species to potential threat. And, given the genetic markers we are seeing here, that reclassification may be long overdue. As Dr. Kestar began transmitting the data to verification stations across the galaxy, Sarah found herself staring at the genetic pattern on her screen. Hidden within the familiar double helix structure were sequences that suggested her species was far more than they appeared to be. The question was whether that revelation would be humanity's salvation or its doom. The analyzer chimed softly, indicating that the full genetic mapping was complete. The final readout appeared on Sarah's screen, a comprehensive analysis of human genetic potential that would change everything. At the bottom of the report, a single line of text appeared in stark red letters: classification recommendation, apex predator, extreme caution advised. Sarah Chen, graduate student in xenobiology, stared at the words that would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. She had no idea that at that moment, similar reports were being generated on 23 different worlds, as other humans underwent routine genetic testing that revealed the same terrifying truth. Humanity was not what they seemed to be. And, the galaxy was about to find out just how dangerous that discovery could be. The emergency session of the Galactic Biological Assessment Council convened on Nexus Prime exactly 18 hours after Dr. Kestar transmitted her findings. Representatives from 42 species gathered in the vast crystalline chamber that served as the center of galactic scientific governance. There forms a kaleidoscope of evolutionary diversity that normally filled Sarah with wonder. Today, however, the beauty of the chamber was lost on her as she sat in the witness section, feeling like a specimen under examination. High Chancellor Vorthak, a massive Gorvani whose rocky hide had weathered countless political storms, called the session to order with a sound like grinding stones. We are gathered to assess new biological data regarding the species known as humanity. Dr. Kestar of the Villani Academy will present her findings. Sarah watched as her advisor approached the central podium, her forearms carrying data crystals that contained the genetic analysis that had turned Sarah's world upside down. The assembled representatives leaned forward with interest. Routine biological assessments were common enough, typically resulting in minor adjustments to trade restrictions or research protocols. They had no idea what they were about to hear. Honored delegates, Dr. Kestar began, her translated voice echoing through the chamber's acoustic enhancement system. 3 standard cycles ago, a routine genetic analysis of human specimens revealed anomalies that require immediate council attention. She activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber, and Sarah's genetic pattern appeared in glowing detail above the assembled delegates. Even in the vast space, the complexity of the pattern was obvious: twisting helixes that seemed to pulse with hidden energy, genetic sequences that defied conventional categorization. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The Zeltari delegates chimed in agitation, their crystalline bodies resonating with harmonic frequencies that spoke of deep concern. The furry Mokrani chittered among themselves, their 6 arms gesturing rapidly in what Sarah had learned was a sign of extreme anxiety. What you are observing, Dr. Kestar continued, is not an error or contamination. Independent verification stations on 17 worlds have confirmed these results. This genetic pattern represents the true evolutionary status of the human species. Fleet Admiral Teskara of the Altarian Navy, her blue-scale form rigid with military precision, raised a clawed hand. Dr. Kestar, are you suggesting that our previous assessment of humanity was incorrect? I am stating, Admiral, that our previous assessment was catastrophically incomplete. The genetic analysis reveals that humans possess dormant evolutionary capabilities that place them in a classification we have never before encountered. The holographic display shifted, showing comparative genetic patterns from various species throughout the galaxy. The differences were immediately apparent. Where other species showed neat, predictable evolutionary pathways, the human pattern writhed with complexity, genetic switches and potential adaptations layered upon each other in patterns that suggested unlimited evolutionary flexibility. The human genome contains what we are terming adaptive cascade sequences, Dr. Kestar explained. These are genetic switches that activate under environmental pressure, allowing for rapid evolutionary adaptation not over generations, but within a single lifespan. Furthermore, these sequences appear to be designed for expansion and territorial acquisition. Counselor Mathare of the Ethereal Collective, her gaseous form shimmering with concern, spoke through her translation matrix. Dr. Kestar, such rapid adaptation is theoretically impossible. The energy requirements alone would be prohibitive. Under normal circumstances, yes. However, human genetic structure includes what can only be described as biological quantum processors, cellular mechanisms that can rapidly optimize genetic expression based on environmental feedback. They are, in effect, evolutionary machines.
Sarah felt a chill as the implications sank in.
She looked around the chamber, seeing the expressions of concern deepening on faces and features across dozens of species. What had seemed like a fascinating genetic anomaly was being revealed as something far more significant. Dr. Zirith of the Vorthan Science Collective, his mechanical voice cutting through the chamber's acoustic enhancement, posed the question everyone was thinking.
Dr. Kestar, what classification do you recommend for the human species?
Based on genetic analysis, environmental adaptation potential, and observed behavioral patterns, I recommend immediate reclassification of humanity from developing species to apex predator species, extreme caution required.
The chamber erupted.
Delegates from peaceful species recoiled in horror, while representatives of more militaristic civilizations leaned forward with sudden interest. Sarah watched in growing alarm as the species that had welcomed humanity into the galactic community began to view her people as a potential threat. High Chancellor Vorthak slammed his massive fist against the podium, the sound echoing like thunder.
Order!
Dr. Kestar, please elaborate on this classification. Honored Chancellor, the genetic evidence suggests that humans are not simply an adaptable species, they are a conquest species. Their genetic structure is optimized for rapid adaptation to new environments, aggressive expansion when resources are threatened, and, most concerning, the ability to evolve countermeasures to threats within a single generation. Fleet Admiral Teskara stood, her military bearing evident in every line of her scaled form. Dr. Kestar, you are describing a species designed for warfare and conquest.
Yet humans have shown no such tendencies during their time in the galactic community. With respect, Admiral, that may be because they have not yet encountered sufficient environmental pressure to activate these genetic sequences.
The conditions under which humans evolved on their home world may have kept these capabilities dormant. Exposure to galactic civilization, new environments, and potential threats could trigger activation. Sarah felt the weight of 42 species' attention as delegates turned to look at her. She was no longer a graduate student in their eyes, she was a representative of a species that had just been labeled as potentially the most dangerous in known space. Councillor Rethvar of the Peaceful Unity Coalition, his four eyes blinking in rapid sequence, voiced what many were thinking.
If this analysis is correct, what is the appropriate response?
Humans already have settlements on dozens of worlds, trade agreements with most major species, and full access to galactic technology. That, said Dr. Kestar quietly, is precisely why this situation is so concerning.
The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear.
Humanity had been welcomed into the galactic community as harmless newcomers, given access to advanced technology, trade routes, and strategic information that could prove devastating if they were actually a conquest species. Director Halmoth of the Intelligence Coordination Bureau, a shadowy umbral whose form seemed to shift and flow, spoke from the chamber's periphery.
If I may, honored delegates, we should consider the behavioral evidence alongside the genetic analysis.
The holographic display shifted again, showing a timeline of human expansion through known space. What had seemed like enthusiastic exploration took on a more ominous cast when viewed through the lens of potential conquest behavior. Humans have established permanent settlements on 43 worlds in 15 years, Director Halmoth continued. They have inserted themselves into trade networks, scientific institutions, and cultural exchanges with remarkable speed. They have also demonstrated unusual interest in military technology and defensive strategies.
Admiral Teskara nodded grimly.
Furthermore, human military doctrine shows sophisticated understanding of asymmetric warfare and resource acquisition strategies that exceed what should be possible for such a young spacefaring species. Sarah wanted to protest, to explain that human curiosity and adaptability were not signs of conquest behavior, but she found herself wondering if there was truth to their concerns.
Had humanity's rapid expansion been driven by something more than mere exploration? Were there instincts hidden in human DNA that even humans themselves didn't understand? High Chancellor Vorthak called for formal recommendation from the assessment committee. Dr. Kestar, what specific measures does your analysis suggest? Honored Chancellor, I recommend immediate implementation of the Apex Predator protocols. All human settlements should be placed under discreet observation. Human access to advanced military technology should be restricted. Most importantly, we need to determine whether genetic activation has already begun in some human populations. And, if it has? Then, we are potentially facing the emergence of the most dangerous species in galactic history, one that has been given unrestricted access to our technology and strategic resources. The vote was swift and decisive.
41 species voted to implement immediate monitoring protocols for human settlements. Only the human representative, Ambassador Collins, voted against the measure, and his opposition carried little weight given the circumstances. As the session concluded, Sarah found herself surrounded by security personnel from multiple species. She was not under arrest, but it was clear that her status had fundamentally changed. She was no longer a student, she was a subject of scientific and security interest. Dr. Kestar approached as the chamber emptied, her mandibles clicking with what Sarah had learned to recognize as distress.
Miss Chen, I want you to understand that this was never personal. The genetic evidence cannot be ignored.
I know, Sarah replied, though her voice carried a hollowness that surprised her.
But what happens now? What happens to humanity?
That depends, Dr. Kestar said softly, on whether your species proves to be what the genetics suggest they are, or something else entirely. As Sarah was escorted from the chamber, she caught sight of the holographic display one final time. Her genetic pattern still hung in the air, a complex web of potential that had just changed humanity's relationship with the galaxy forever.
Embedded within those twisted helixes were secrets that even humans didn't understand about themselves. The question was whether those secrets would prove to be humanity's salvation or the galaxy's doom.
And, somewhere in the depths of space, on human settlements scattered across dozens of worlds, people were going about their daily lives unaware that they had just been classified as the galaxy's newest apex predator species. The real test would come when they discovered what that classification meant and what they were willing to become to survive it. The first sign that something had changed came when Sarah's access card stopped working. She discovered it 3 days after the council session, when she tried to enter Laboratory 7 for her morning research session. The scanner beeped red, denying her entry to the space where she had made the discovery that turned her world upside down. A polite message appeared on the display: access temporarily restricted, contact administrative services. Administrative services proved to be a Volani bureaucrat named Krethan who spoke in the carefully neutral tones of someone delivering unpleasant news.
Miss Chen, your academic status has been temporarily suspended pending ongoing evaluation. This is not disciplinary action, merely a precautionary measure.
Precautionary against what? Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. The Galactic Biological Assessment Council has recommended enhanced monitoring of human individuals who have displayed genetic markers of concern. You will be relocated to more suitable accommodations while the evaluation process continues. The more suitable accommodations turned out to be a luxurious apartment in the diplomatic quarter of Kepler Station, complete with full amenities, entertainment systems, and a view of the nebula that had drawn her to xenobiology in the first place. It was also equipped with sensors that monitored everything from her heart rate to her genetic expression patterns, and security systems that made it clear she was as much prisoner as guest. Sarah might have settled into this gilded captivity if not for the message that arrived on her 4th day of confinement. It came through channels she hadn't known existed, routing through entertainment system frequencies in patterns that suggested serious covert communication capabilities. Dr. Chen, the message began, displaying as text across her viewing screen, my name is Marcus Webb, and I represent a group of humans who have become aware of recent developments regarding our species classification. We need to talk. The message included coordinates for a meeting location in one of Kepler Station's maintenance sectors, along with instructions for evading the monitoring systems that tracked her movements. Sarah stared at the message for several minutes, weighing her options. She could report it to her handlers and continue living in comfortable captivity, or she could take a risk that might lead to answers about what was happening to humanity. She chose answers. Following Webb's instructions, Sarah disabled her personal monitoring devices using techniques that seemed surprisingly familiar despite never having learned them. The genetic cascade sequences Dr. Kestar had identified apparently included enhanced problem-solving capabilities that activated under stress. She found herself understanding complex systems intuitively, spotting weaknesses in security protocols that should have taken years of training to identify. The maintenance tunnels beneath Kepler Station were a maze of pipes and conduits that served the massive space habitat's life support systems. Sarah navigated them with growing confidence, her enhanced spatial awareness allowing her to track her position relative to the station's structure with uncanny precision. She found Marcus Webb in a chamber deep within the maintenance section, surrounded by equipment that hummed with subtle energy signatures. He was a tall, lean man with graying hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. 2 other humans accompanied him, a woman with Asian features who introduced herself as Dr. Lisa Park, and a younger man named David Santos whose nervous energy suggested enhanced reflexes.
Dr. Chen, Webb said, extending his hand in greeting. I apologize for the cloak and dagger routine, but circumstances have made conventional communication inadvisable. Who are you people? Sarah asked, though something about their presence felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain. We're humans who have undergone genetic activation, Dr. Park explained. The stress of being classified as a potential threat species triggered evolutionary changes in our physiology and cognitive abilities. We're what Dr. Kestar's analysis predicted we could become. Sarah studied them more carefully, noticing details she had missed at first glance. Their movements were too fluid, their reactions too quick, their awareness too comprehensive. They moved like predators, she realized, though they projected an aura of controlled calm rather than aggression. How many? She asked. Approximately 2,000 across human-occupied space, Webb replied. The activation appears to be triggered by environmental stress, perceived threats, or exposure to certain technological frequencies. Once activated, the changes are permanent and progressive. What kind of changes? David Santos answered, his voice carrying undertones that seemed to resonate at frequencies below normal human hearing. Enhanced cognitive processing, improved physical capabilities, increased situational awareness, and, most significantly, what can only be described as tactical thinking. We don't just adapt to problems, we anticipate them and develop solutions before they fully manifest. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. Since her confinement, she had found herself thinking several moves ahead in every situation, analyzing potential threats and escape routes, assessing the capabilities and motivations of everyone around her. She had attributed it to stress, but now she wondered if something deeper was happening. The genetic activation isn't random, Dr. Park continued. It appears to be triggered by perceived threats to human survival or freedom. The Council's decision to classify us as apex predators and implement monitoring protocols has created exactly the environmental pressure needed to activate dormant sequences across human populations. Are you saying the Council caused the very thing they were trying to prevent? Webb nodded grimly. Exactly. And it gets worse. Other species have begun to notice the changes in activated humans. Some view us as confirmation of their worst fears about human nature. Others see us as a resource to be exploited or controlled. He activated a holographic display that showed star maps marked with various symbols. The Vorthan Science Collective has begun covert operations to capture activated humans for research purposes. The Altarian Navy has deployed stealth monitoring platforms around human settlements. Most concerning, the Umbral Intelligence Bureau has initiated what they call preemptive containment measures. Sarah studied the display, her enhanced cognitive abilities automatically analyzing patterns and strategic implications that would have been invisible to her before. They're preparing for conflict. They see activated humans as either weapons to be controlled or threats to be eliminated. Yes. And, given our capabilities, they're probably right to be concerned. Activated humans display strategic thinking and adaptation abilities that could pose serious challenges to established galactic power structures. So what do we do? That, Webb said, depends on what kind of species we choose to become. He gestured to another display that showed population data from human settlements across the galaxy. The activation process appears to be accelerating. Environmental pressure from increased surveillance and restrictions is triggering genetic changes in more humans every day. Within 6 months, we estimate that 10% of the human population will have undergone some level of activation. Dr. Park leaned forward, her expression serious. We're at a crossroads, Dr. Chen. We can allow fear and suspicion to drive us toward the aggressive, conquest-oriented behavior that other species expect from apex predators. Or we can prove that enhanced capabilities don't necessarily lead to domination. How? By demonstrating that activated humans can be something new apex protectors rather than apex predators. We've been developing networks to help newly activated individuals understand their capabilities and channel them constructively. We're also working to establish communication with moderate factions among other species who don't want to see this situation escalate into open conflict. Sarah felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. Around them, the machinery of Kepler Station hummed with steady purpose, maintaining the artificial environment that allowed dozens of species to coexist peacefully. It was a symbol of what galactic cooperation could achieve and what might be lost if fear and suspicion were allowed to dominate. What would you need from me? Webb smiled, and Sarah caught a glimpse of the enhanced tactical thinking behind his calm exterior. Your research data is invaluable for understanding the activation process.
But, more importantly, you're in a unique position to serve as a bridge between activated and non-activated humans, and between humanity and other species.
The Council is watching my every move.
Which makes you perfect for our purposes. If we can demonstrate that even closely monitored activated humans pose no threat to galactic stability, it might help defuse the situation before it escalates into something none of us can control. Sarah looked at each of them, seeing the mix of enhanced capabilities and genuine concern for humanity's future in their faces. They were what the genetic analysis had predicted humans could become, but they were choosing to use their enhanced abilities to protect rather than conquer.
What do you need me to do?
First, we need you to return to your quarters and continue behaving as a cooperative subject of study. Let the Council's scientists monitor you while we work to establish communication channels with moderate factions. Second, when the time comes, we'll need you to help us demonstrate what activated humanity is really capable of.
And what is that?
David Santos answered, his enhanced awareness already picking up the approach of station security forces several levels above them. Protecting the galactic community from threats they can't handle themselves. Because Dr. Chen, the real danger to galactic stability isn't what humans might become, it's what other species have started becoming in response to their fear of us. Webb was already moving toward a concealed exit as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the maintenance tunnels.
We'll contact you when the time is right. Until then, remember that you're not just representing yourself anymore.
You're helping to define what humanity becomes in the eyes of the galaxy. Sarah made her way back through the tunnels, her enhanced abilities allowing her to avoid the security teams that were beginning to sweep the maintenance areas. By the time she returned to her quarters, she had made her decision. She would play the role of cooperative subject while working with Webb's group to prove that enhanced humans could be trusted. She had no idea that 3 sectors away, Director Helmuth of the Intelligence Coordination Bureau was reviewing surveillance data that showed clearly impossible capabilities in the human they were monitoring. Or that Fleet Admiral Teskara had just received reports of coordinated activities among human populations that suggested organizational capabilities far beyond what they had previously demonstrated. The hunt for humanity was about to begin in earnest, and Sarah Chen found herself at the center of a conflict that would determine whether her species would be allowed to exist freely among the stars or would be forced to prove their right to survival through the very capabilities that made them feared. The genetic activation was spreading, and, with it, the question of what humanity would choose to become.
The attack came without warning.
Sarah was reviewing xenobiology texts in her monitored quarters when every screen on Kepler station flashed red and emergency klaxons began wailing throughout the massive habitat. The synthetic voice of the station's AI echoed through the corridors in multiple languages, all personnel to emergency stations.
Unknown hostile forces detected at system perimeter.
This is not a drill. Through her apartment's massive viewing port, Sarah could see the distant flashes of weapons fire as something engaged the station's defensive perimeter. Her enhanced vision, now fully activated after weeks of stress-induced genetic changes, could make out details that should have been impossible to see at such distances.
Sleek, angular ships unlike any design in the galactic database were systematically dismantling the outer defense grid.
Her door chimed, and Dr. Kestar entered without waiting for permission, her forearms carrying emergency equipment and her compound eyes displaying the rapid color fluctuations that indicated extreme agitation among her species.
Miss Chen, we must evacuate immediately.
The station is under attack by unknown forces.
Unknown forces?
Sarah asked, though her enhanced cognitive abilities were already processing the tactical situation from what she could observe through the viewing port.
Dr. Kestar, those ships are using adaptive technology.
They're analyzing our defenses in real time and modifying their weapons to counter each defensive measure.
Dr. Kestar stopped mid-motion, staring at Sarah. How could you possibly determine that from visual observation alone?
Sarah realized she had revealed more of her enhanced capabilities than intended, but the crisis made concealment seem less important than survival.
The same genetic activation you've been studying.
It's been progressing since the council session.
I can process tactical information at levels I never could before. Another explosion rocked the station, this one much closer.
Through the viewing port, Sarah could see that the unknown attackers had broken through the outer defenses and were now engaging the station's main defensive installations. Their tactical coordination was flawless, suggesting either extensive prior intelligence or adaptive combat algorithms beyond anything the galactic community had developed.
Dr. Kestar, we need to get to the communications center. I need to contact other humans.
Miss Chen, this is not the time for, this is exactly the time. Sarah moved toward the door with fluid grace that reflected her enhanced physical capabilities.
Because I don't think this attack is random. Someone wants to see how humans respond to a crisis situation.
They made their way through corridors filled with panicking beings from dozens of species, all rushing toward evacuation points or emergency stations. Sarah's enhanced awareness allowed her to track multiple conversations simultaneously, picking up fragments of information that painted a disturbing picture of the attack. Defense grid completely compromised, weapons adapting faster than we can compensate, never seen technology like this. Where did they come from? As they reached the communication center, Sarah's suspicions were confirmed. Marcus Webb appeared on her personal communicator, his image slightly distorted by jamming attempts that his network was somehow bypassing.
Dr. Chen, are you safe? For now.
Webb, this attack isn't what it appears to be.
We know.
The attacking force is using technology that matches theoretical designs developed by the Vorthan Science Collective 3 months ago.
This is a field test, Dr. Chen.
Someone is using an artificial crisis to observe how activated humans respond to extreme threat scenarios. Sarah felt a cold anger building in her chest, a response that seemed to come from genetic depths she was only beginning to understand. Around her, the communication center buzzed with desperate activity as station personnel tried to coordinate defense against attackers who seemed to anticipate every countermeasure.
How many activated humans are on the station? 47 that we know of.
All in critical positions: security, engineering, tactical coordination.
It's not a coincidence, Dr. Chen.
This entire situation has been orchestrated to put activated humans in positions where they'll have to use their enhanced capabilities to save the station. Dr. Kestar, who had been monitoring the conversation with growing alarm, stepped forward.
Mr. Webb, are you suggesting that this attack is a deliberate test of human capabilities?
I'm stating it as fact, Doctor.
The question is what we do about it.
Another massive impact shook the station, and the lights flickered ominously. Through the communication center's displays, Sarah could see that the attackers had disabled 3 more defensive installations. At their current rate of progress, they would breach the station's inner hull within the hour. We have to stop them, Sarah said, her enhanced tactical thinking already analyzing possible countermeasures. Not because it's a test, but because there are 50,000 beings on this station who don't deserve to die for someone's experiment.
Webb's expression became grim.
Dr. Chen, if activated humans reveal their full capabilities to save the station, it will provide confirmation of every fear the Council has about our species.
We'll be proving that we are exactly the kind of strategic threat they believe us to be. And if we don't, 50,000 innocent beings die to protect our secret. The choice crystallized in Sarah's mind with perfect clarity.
Her enhanced cognitive abilities could see the strategic implications of both options, but her human heart made the decision simple.
Webb, can you coordinate with the other activated humans on the station?
Yes, but then, do it. Tell them we're going to end this attack, and we're going to do it in a way that shows the galaxy exactly what activated humans are capable of when they choose to protect rather than conquer. Sarah turned to Dr. Kestar, whose mandibles were clicking rapidly with agitation. Doctor, I need access to the station's tactical coordination center. Miss Chen, you don't have the security clearance for I have the capabilities to save this station.
The clearance is irrelevant.
Dr. Kestar stared at her for a long moment, then activated her administrative override codes.
Follow me.
The Tactical Coordination Center was chaos when they arrived. Fleet Admiral Teskara stood at the central command station, her scaled features rigid with frustration as she watched her defensive strategies fail one after another. The attacking force seemed to anticipate every move, countering tactical decisions before they could be fully implemented. Admiral, Dr. Kestar called out, Miss Chen believes she can assist with defensive coordination. Admiral Teskara turned, her reptilian eyes focusing on Sarah with a mixture of desperation and skepticism.
Dr. Chen, this is not the time for academic theorizing. We are facing complete defensive collapse.
Admiral, I can help, but I need temporary command authority for activated human personnel throughout the station.
Activated human personnel? What are you talking about?
Sarah looked around the tactical center, her enhanced awareness immediately identifying the 3 humans among the mixed-species crew. They stood at peripheral stations, following orders but clearly capable of much more. Their posture, their reaction times, their pattern recognition skills, they were activated, and they were restraining themselves while the station died around them.
Admiral, there are 47 humans on this station who have undergone genetic enhancement.
They have capabilities that could turn this battle around, but they need coordination to be effective.
Genetic enhancement? Dr. Chen, what exactly are you suggesting?
Instead of answering with words, Sarah moved to the central tactical display and began analyzing the attack patterns with speed and precision that made the assembled officers step back in amazement. Her hands flew over the control interfaces, processing data streams and identifying patterns that had been invisible to the station's best tactical minds. The attacking force is using predictive algorithms based on our standard defensive doctrines, she said, her voice carrying new authority.
But they're not accounting for non-standard responses. If we coordinate human personnel in key positions and implement adaptive tactical sequences, we can create defensive patterns they can't predict.
She turned to Admiral Teskara, and the fleet admiral saw something in Sarah's eyes that made her step back, not fear or aggression, but calm competence backed by capabilities beyond normal comprehension. Admiral, I need command authority now, or this station falls within 30 minutes. The admiral looked around the tactical center, seeing the barely controlled panic on the faces of her best officers as their defenses continued to crumble. Then, she looked back at Sarah Chen, graduate student in xenobiology, who somehow radiated tactical competence beyond anything in her experience. Computer, grant temporary tactical coordination authority to Dr.
Sarah Chen, authorization Admiral Teskara 779.
Authority granted, the computer replied. Sarah immediately activated the communication system, reaching out to every activated human on the station.
This is Dr. Chen in tactical coordination. All activated personnel, switch to Enhancement Protocol 7 and await tactical instructions.
Across Kepler Station, 47 humans suddenly stopped restraining their capabilities and began operating at levels that made their alien colleagues stare in amazement. In engineering, maintenance protocols were optimized with inhuman precision. In security, threat assessment became predictive rather than reactive. In communications, data processing accelerated beyond what the equipment should have been capable of handling. And, in the tactical center, Sarah Chen began coordinating a defense that transformed activated human capabilities into something unprecedented, a collective intelligence that could adapt faster than any enemy could counter. The battle for Kepler Station was about to demonstrate what humanity could become when they chose to protect rather than conquer. But it would also reveal why the galaxy had good reason to fear what they might become if they ever chose otherwise. The transformation was instantaneous and absolute. Within seconds of Sarah's authorization, 47 activated humans across Kepler Station began operating at their true potential. In the tactical center, displays that had shown the steady collapse of defensive positions suddenly blazed with new data streams as human-enhanced processing capabilities came online. Sarah's consciousness expanded beyond her individual awareness as she linked with other activated humans through quantum entanglement patterns built into their enhanced genetic structure. She could feel Marcus Webb coordinating security responses 12 levels below, Dr. Lisa Park optimizing power distribution from the engineering core, and David Santos managing communication protocols that allowed for real-time tactical coordination across the massive station. They were no longer individual humans working separately, they had become a distributed intelligence operating through human bodies, each enhanced mind contributing to a collective capability that was greater than the sum of its parts. Incredible, Admiral Teskara whispered, watching tactical displays update with information flow rates that exceeded her understanding.
How are you processing data this quickly?
We're not processing it, Sarah replied, her attention simultaneously focused on 47 different tactical elements across the station.
We're living it. Admiral, prepare to implement defensive pattern designation Omega-7. We don't have a defensive pattern called Omega-7. We do now.
Sarah's hands moved across the tactical controls with fluid precision, implementing strategies that seemed to emerge from her enhanced consciousness fully formed. The attacking ships had been systematically dismantling Kepler Station's defenses by predicting and countering each response. But their predictive algorithms were based on standard galactic tactical doctrine, they had no framework for understanding what activated humans could achieve. The first surprise came when the station's defensive turrets suddenly began firing in patterns that seemed random but created intersecting fields of energy that forced the attacking ships into predictable evasive maneuvers. The second surprise came when those evasive maneuvers drove the ships directly into carefully positioned minefields that hadn't existed moments before.
Impossible, one of the Volani tactical officers clicked in amazement. The defensive installations were destroyed 15 minutes ago.
The installations were destroyed, Sarah confirmed, her consciousness tracking the improvised defensive network that activated humans had constructed using maintenance drones, repurposed equipment, and tactical coordination that treated the entire station as a single organism. But the defensive capability was distributed throughout the station's infrastructure. The attacking ships adapted quickly, as their advanced technology allowed them to analyze and counter new tactical approaches. But each adaptation was met by another innovation from the human collective intelligence, creating an escalating cycle of tactical evolution that began to stress the attackers' adaptive algorithms. Dr. Chen, Admiral Teskara said, studying the tactical displays with growing amazement, your people aren't just defending the station.
You're learning from the attackers' technology and incorporating their innovations into your own tactical framework.
Yes, Sarah replied simply. It's what we do. The attacking force, which had been systematically destroying the station's defenses for over an hour, suddenly found themselves facing an opponent that adapted faster than their technology could compensate. Weapons that had been effective moments before became useless as humans modified defensive strategies in real time. Tactical maneuvers that had guaranteed success were anticipated and countered before they could be completed. Most unsettling for the attackers was the growing realization that the humans weren't just defending, they were analyzing, learning, and preparing counteroffensives that would turn the attacking ship's own technology against them. The end came suddenly. One moment the attacking force was pressing their assault against increasingly effective defenses, and the next moment they were retreating at maximum velocity as human-controlled systems began targeting their ships with weapons adapted from their own technology.
They're running, Admiral Teskara said in amazement.
They accomplished their mission, Sarah corrected, her consciousness slowly contracting back toward individual awareness as the immediate threat passed. They observed activated humans operating at full capability under crisis conditions.
They now have data on what we're truly capable of.
The tactical center fell silent except for the hum of equipment and the distant sounds of damage control teams working throughout the station. The assembled officers stared at Sarah as she completed the tactical shutdown, her enhanced abilities returning to dormant status as stress levels decreased.
Dr. Chen, Admiral Teskara said carefully, what exactly did we just witness?
You witnessed 47 humans operating as a collective intelligence for the purpose of protecting 50,000 beings from an artificial threat created to test our capabilities. Sarah's voice carried traces of the enhanced coordination that was fading as her individual consciousness reasserted itself.
You witnessed what activated humans become when they choose to protect rather than conquer.
Dr. Kestar, who had observed the entire engagement from the tactical center's periphery, approached slowly.
Miss Chen, the capabilities your people displayed exceed every projection in our genetic analysis.
The coordination, the adaptive strategies, the technological innovation, it suggests intelligence enhancement far beyond what individual activation should provide. Individual activation is just the beginning, Sarah explained. Under sufficient stress, activated humans can form temporary collective intelligences that allow for capabilities that exceed individual limits. It's what the genetic analysis meant when it identified cascade adaptation sequences.
And this collective intelligence, it could be used for conquest as easily as protection?
Sarah met Dr. Kestar's compound gaze directly. Yes. If activated humans felt threatened enough, if they believed their survival was at stake, they could form permanent collective intelligences that would be essentially unstoppable using current galactic technology. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. What they had witnessed was activated humans choosing to protect rather than conquer, but the same capabilities could be turned toward domination if circumstances changed. So the question, Admiral Teskara said quietly, is how the galaxy responds to this knowledge. Her answer came within hours. As reports of the engagement spread throughout galactic communication networks, responses began flooding in from species across known space. Some called for immediate action against the human threat.
Others demanded further study of human capabilities. A few suggested that humanity should be welcomed as powerful allies rather than feared as potential enemies.
But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. As Sarah sat in her quarters, now under even more intensive monitoring, her communication system activated with an incoming message from beyond the galactic rim. The transmission signature was unlike anything in the galactic database, not alien technology, but something that felt disturbingly familiar.
Dr. Chen, the message began, displaying as both text and audio in perfect English. My name is Admiral Rebecca Torres of the Terran Deep Exploration Fleet.
We've been monitoring the situation in galactic space for some time, and recent events have convinced us that it's time to make contact.
Sarah stared at the message in shock. Terran Deep Exploration Fleet?
But Earth only achieved faster than light travel 15 years ago. Earth, Admiral Torres continued, achieved faster than light travel 15 years ago.
But humans have been exploring the galaxy for much longer than that. We represent the descendants of populations that left Earth centuries ago using technology that your galactic community isn't aware of.
We've been watching humanity's integration into galactic society, waiting to see whether they would develop into a conquest species or something else. The message paused, and Sarah could feel the weight of revelation hanging in the air.
Dr. Chen, the genetic activation your people are experiencing is not random evolution.
It's the manifestation of capabilities that were designed into humanity long ago. The question now is whether your people will use those capabilities to protect the galactic community or to dominate it. Recent events suggest that activated humans are choosing protection over conquest. If that choice remains consistent, we are prepared to reveal ourselves to galactic society and offer assistance in managing human activation.
If humans choose conquest, we will be forced to intervene to protect galactic stability.
You have 48 hours to demonstrate whether humanity can be trusted with the full extent of their capabilities.
We will be watching.
The message ended, leaving Sarah staring at her communication display in stunned silence. Humanity wasn't just another species that had recently achieved space travel, they were part of something larger, something that had been watching and waiting for them to prove what they would become. Outside her viewing port, Kepler station continued its slow rotation, carrying representatives of dozens of species who were now debating humanity's fate. Below the station's hull, damage control teams worked to repair the destruction caused by an attack designed to test human capabilities. And, somewhere beyond the galactic rim, an unknown human civilization watched and waited to see whether their distant cousins would prove worthy of the genetic legacy that had been engineered into humanity millennia ago. Sarah Chen, graduate student in xenobiology, sat at the center of a revelation that would reshape everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. The question was whether her species would rise to meet the expectations of their hidden heritage or fall short of what they had been designed to become. The choice was humanity's to make, but the galaxy would live with the consequences.